Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast, discussing and debating the iconic and the forgotten of 80s and 90s pop culture, with your co-hosts, James D. Graves and Jason Colvin.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast. Please give a big round of applause for my co-host and friend of all ages, Mr. Jason Colvin.
How's everybody doing? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We're so glad you're listening.
We are here today to talk again about Gladiator and
Braveheart,
yes. I'm going to have to start pointing at you.
Wait, I've got a question for you before we go any further.
Okay.
Yes. Do you like movies about gladiators?
Oh, very good. Very good. Okay, so we left off last time when we were talking about the composers. As far as composers go, they're both great.
They're both great.
But my film score is better than your film score.
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
It really is.
Okay. Well,
okay.
If you like bagpipes, then you can stick with D on
I
this
do
one.
like bagpipes.
You're crazy.
Anybody watching Braveheart who doesn't like bagpipes is probably not going to like that
I
movie.
like James Horner. I'm not a big bagpipes guy.
Well, then I can see why you don't like the movie, because that's like the first thing that happens is the bagpipes start playing.
I mean, I'm ready to kind of dive in. I've got a few things that I want to talk about as far as interesting tidbits before we dive into sort of final opinion.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, let's just kind of do a film comparison. I think, probably what we should do is make an attempt to say something nice about the film that we don't like.
Right. Let's do that.
Okay. So my nice thing to say is this film was pretty.
It was pretty.
Your Gladiator movie was pretty.
That's the best you got?
Okay, so I mean, honestly, I like Marcus Aurelius by Richard Harris. I like Commodus by Joaquin Phoenix. I think they both did a fantastic job. I like Lucilla. Connie Nielsen did a fantastic job with that part. Those supporting cast members killed it.
That's similar to what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I mean, I really enjoyed the actress who plays Mirren. They plucked her right out of college, basically.
Catherine McCormick had just finished up with drama school, had done one really low-budget film, and then was cast in this movie.
She does a lot with her eyes, and sort of, she has that quiet grace.
Right.
I can see why Mel Gibson we talked about how he fell in love with her a little bit.
Right.
So she does a great job, I think. I think the actor who played Stephen, a guy that you really like, he does a great job, steals scenes, has great lines. He's really funny. And then the guy who played Robert the Bruce, I thought, did a great job of being conflicted, right?
Right.
I want to believe.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You can tell it's just tearing him up inside. I think he did a fantastic job.
All men betray.
I think, for me, the movie is compelling. Right? The story is compelling.
Right.
I'm interested in how the Scots won their freedom. William Wallace is an interesting character.
Right.
It's a great story of courage and leadership.
And people probably can't tell from our voices which one of us are which, like if they've seen our pictures out there. You are the one that looks like you have more of the Scottish and Irish heritage.
That's right.
Than I do. I look more Southern European and you look more Northern European. But you're finding favor with the Italian movie and I'm with the UK movie.
It's interesting. We did talk about that the other day. I have red hair. If you haven't seen me, I look Irish-ish,
Yeah.
And you definitely look more Mediterranean-ish.
Right.
European.
From the clan of McCalvin.
But, I think both films are skillfully made.
Yeah.
For me, the stories are compelling. I think they're filmed well. I think they look good on the screen.
Right.
I do have some problems with Braveheart.
Let's stop pretending to like movies that we don't really like, and let's just get on. Let's get on with
Your
this.
Your movie is pretty good.
Your movie is okay.
Okay.
Ish.
Okay. I really feel like you're way off base on this.
I feel like you're completely off base. I mean, really, when you told me that, I was just like, I cannot fathom that you like Gladiator better than Braveheart. It just doesn't, I don't even understand it.
Okay.
So let's do this. Let's just kind of bounce back and forth.
Okay.
Let's just talk about the main character. Okay, we'll talk about William Wallace. Then we can talk about Maximus.
Okay.
Maximus the Restimus, Givinimus.
Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Yes, whatever he made.
Father to a murdered son.
Okay, so I don't want to get into the personal lives of the actors. I mean, we can poke holes, all of that, all day long, and can do that with any actors. But if we look at actually the performance here, I mean, I believed everything that was happening with William Wallace. I mean, his emotions, his humor, all of those things came through so clearly, and he was a character that I identified with, and then I was just like, yeah, I want to be like that. I want to believe.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that. I felt the same way. I felt like Robert the Bruce. I felt like I was less of a man than this guy was, and wanted to be more like him. Okay.
All right. So, I mean, this is kind of the crux of my position, but
yeah.
I mean, Gladiator is the story of Maximus.
Mm-hmm.
You have to like this guy for it to work.
Right.
And for me, he's loved by the Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
He's loved by his wife and family.
Yeah.
He's loved and respected by his men. He is a servant leader, a loving father, a good husband. He is good at his job. He is the man that I aspire to be. Loved, appreciated.
I'm over here shaking my head at you.
Literally, you are the only male I've ever met who doesn't love this character.
No, because to me, he's pouty through the whole movie. Like, this is all just, I'm frustrated that I got asked to do something that I didn't want to do. You know, poor me, I got asked to lead Rome. And then poor me, I'm being
because he wants to go home to his family.
Right, but come on, man. I mean, and then once everything goes bad, no, I refuse to fight. I throw this. He just seems pouty the whole movie. When I found out later on that Russell Crowe was getting really frustrated as they tried to make this movie with no script, and that he would walk off the set, I was like, yeah, that's the vibe I got from the character. Like, he's just irritated and punky all the time.
You are way off base on this.
So, but are you going to tell me that you didn't identify with William Wallace?
Okay, so here's my problem with William Wallace. It's not that I didn't identify with him. I am a Mel Gibson fan. The roots of my fanhood are based in Lethal Weapon. Okay. So...
Me too.
I mean, I've seen a lot of... I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I haven't seen a lot of his movies, but he is pretty much Martin Riggs for me all the time.
Okay.
So when he goes to fight... when he's circling the English and he's going to go pick a fight, right?
Right.
I really expected him to do a Three Stooges, poke him in the eye, slap him in the face, and...
But I mean, he does. I mean, as far as ancient Scotland goes, he does that kind of, let's flash him our front and then moon him on our back. And
I want to believe, I want to like him.
Yeah. And when I went to go see Gladiator, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna buy into this movie. But it was just,
Literally, you're the only man I know that doesn't love this movie.
I've never met somebody who thought that Gladiator was better than Braveheart. That I
okay,
know.
Well, I mean, we're going to find out. Hopefully,
yeah.
If you are out there, and I mean, because we are definitely on opposite sides of this deal.
Yeah.
Who's right and who's wrong?
So that's main character. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's go to villain. Right.
Okay.
So I've already said I loved Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this.
Right.
There are times that I was just like, why? He seems like he's kind of doing a high school Shakespeare, but those moments were very brief, and overall the performance was really, really solid. I think we mentioned it last time. He was incredibly nervous about this performance, but ended up getting the nod for Best Supporting Actor. Didn't win, but got the nomination. But he was he was having to be imbibed by Russell Crowe and Richard Harris to get him over the anxiety that he had.
He was still a young guy. I mean,
yeah, he's really very young.
I mean, I really don't know what his age was when he filmed this.
I think he was in the neighborhood of 26. Yeah.
Okay. And he's out there with Richard Harris.
Yeah.
Right? Oliver Reed.
Yep.
Russell Crowe, who's the next superstar. I really like the performance by him. I'm not necessarily a Joaquin Phoenix fan.
Right.
But he does a good job, and his character is everything that Maximus is not. He wants power. He wants respect. He wants love.
And he can't get it.
And he can't get it.
Right.
Okay.
And I'll also say this about him, as far as villains go, most of the time, I would prefer to kind of understand where my villain is coming from. Like I like the idea of seeing, oh, hey, he had this bad experience, and that's what's made him the man that he is right now.
He's just a bad guy.
Well, with him, he has this anticipation that suddenly gets soured.
Are you ready to do your duty for Rome?
Yes, Father.
You will not be emperor.
Like I really, he was caught off guard, and so I can see how he's frustrated at the event and kind of turns the way that he does. He even appreciates his own shortcomings.
You wrote to me once, listing the 4 chief virtues: wisdom, justice, fortitude, and temperance. As I read the list, I knew I had none of them. But I have other virtues, Father.
You wanted these things, but you didn't appreciate these other things that I do have, and I didn't have those things, and so he just felt unloved, And as a dad, you always fear that you're not giving your kid the right, whatever the right upbringing is, whether it's love or discipline or whatever.
Right.
So I actually enjoyed that you could see that from the villain in Gladiator.
Right. Well, so the villain from Braveheart,
Yeah.
the King
Longshanks.
Edward Longshanks,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Good bad guy, Darth Vader-esque.
I
right?
mean,
He's smart.
Yes.
He's in charge.
Yes.
He is strategic and sort of outthinks him
Yes.
down the line a couple of times.
Right.
And I think he's doing bad things, but he's doing his job as a king and takes his job very serious.
Right.
Which, for me, a good bad guy is somebody who believes what they're doing is right.
Right.
It's just in contrast to what you believe, right?
Right. Well, he wasn't conniving in any way. He's evil through and through.
Right.
Like you're not getting I can see how maybe he came to this path. No, you just get bad guy, evil. But he sells it. Like somehow, and I think it goes to the chops of the actor and the age of the actor. He's selling something because he's a good actor. I mean, he's pure bad, but you're still like, you believe it.
I dispatched them before I sent your wife. So our little ruse succeeded. Thank you. And while this upstart awaits my arrival in York, my forces will have arrived in Edinburgh behind him.
Well, and you have to be ruthless to protect your kingdom. I
Right.
understand all that.
Yeah.
So he does a good job.
Yeah, fantastic job.
I didn't like that Wallace and him were never face to face.
Okay.
Good guy, bad guy, mano-y-mano. You at least get that at the end of Gladiator.
Yeah, and see, honestly, that doesn't bother me as much. I know that was another big problem with me for this movie, is that Maximus's story seemed to only be about, I'm going to get revenge on Commodus. There was no other motivation for what he was doing. It's just, I'm going to go get revenge on Commodus.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because that's exactly my problem with Braveheart. Mel Gibson, his wife, gets killed
Yes.
by Joe Deputy,
Yeah, the garrison, right?
who he promptly exacts revenge on quickly and
Yes.
severely.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden he's like leading the freedom fighters.
There's more to the story. It's a bigger cause.
I mean, kind of, but not really. He wasn't
What?
really interested in that.
He was too!
Initially, he wasn't.
Oh my gosh. No.
All he wanted to do was raise a family and live in peace.
Okay, so let's talk about the beginning of the movie real quick.
Okay.
He's a little kid. His father and brother narrowly escape murder from Longshanks because they go to peace talks and they're late to the meeting.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And what happens to all of those other guys? They were there to talk about peace talks with England and the freedom of Scotland, right? From the beginning of the movie, that's what's going on, and that's is the inspiration for him as a child.
Yes.
And he wants to
He
go
wants
fight.
to go fight,
He
but-
wants to go fight.
When he comes back home,
Yep.
they invite him to go to the meeting. He's like, no, thanks. Not interested.
Right, because he's been educated. He has changed from the juggernaut, let's just drive this kamikaze into war, to a man who's grown to appreciate using his wits before he uses his sword. And so he has an education. I mean, that's what I love about it, is you've got an educated guy here. You're in the midst of old Scotland where you live in rock mud huts.
Right. Right. Not for me, but thanks.
Right. I mean, it's just, but you have a guy who speaks Latin and French and who understands the mechanics of war because he's been traveling for the last 20 years with his uncle Argyle and learning all of these things. And his decision after all of that is, it is better to have a quiet, simple life than to go into these exploits. And it's only once he's forced into this situation that he...
I understand.
Yeah.
I liked the simple revenge story of Gladiator.
Yeah.
It's his sole pursuit.
Right.
Now, he does have the side deal, his duty to give Rome back to the people.
It doesn't even come up. It does. I mean, like, there's one scene where he's at the top of the stairs. It's like, this is not what they want. I'm like, dude, you can't sell that 3/4 into the movie now. That's a side thing. Mm-hmm.
He wants to kill Commodus.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
Yes.
I'm here to kill Commodus.
Yes.
And how do I do that? I got to be the best gladiator in the world so I can stand right next to him.
Yeah.
That's a compelling story.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate about Gladiator.
Okay.
Braveheart gets a little convoluted on.
It's a more interesting story.
Well, his wife, and then he sleeps with the Queen of France.
Okay,
which is satisfying but confusing.
I kind of question the decision to have him sleep with her.
Okay.
And watching with my 10-year-old, he was like, "What is he doing?" Like, he was outraged. But
did you say, "Look at her"? You see her?
No. Yes, I'm teaching my child to be a pig.
That's Sophie Marceau, son. Okay.
So, but I mean, this is something that starts in 1280. So he comes back at about 1300, and this is over in 1314. This is 14 years. Yeah. I mean, yes, he loved his original bride, but I mean, where he's still a human man. You know,
okay,
and she's still a human woman who has a man who's not.
No, that part of the story was satisfying because, he gets her pregnant.
Yeah,
and that's sticking it to the king.
Yeah, that plays into the end, and that's really I get it.
I did like, clearly Maximus. His son and wife were murdered unjustly.
Yeah.
Later on, he does share a kiss with Lucilla, his former lover, we think.
Yes, right.
But Ridley Scott was very careful not to make that too sexual.
Yeah, he didn't want it to be.
Stay on point.
Right.
You are seeking revenge for your wife and child.
If only J.J. Abrams had made that decision with the most recent Star Wars movie. Spoiler alert. We've given you no spoiler alerts, but we think you're smart enough to have anticipated that movies that are going to be this old, we're going to spoil when we're talking about. But I'm at this moment about to talk about a movie that's still out in theaters. So if you have not seen The Rise of Skywalker, turn the volume down and wait for a minute or so and turn the volume back up.
While we
skip
blow
ahead.
our top. Yeah.
Right. So just real quick. Rise of Skywalker, the kiss should never have happened. I just have to say that right now. The kiss at the end should never have happened. It doesn't make any sense at all.
The hour before and after the kiss shouldn't have happened, too.
Agreed. I thought you liked the movie more than I did. But
I did. That's only because I hated Last Jedi. But
okay.
We actually Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
Before we get all the hate mail on that.
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously, we're Star Wars fans, or we wouldn't be so passionate about
that's right.
the messing of it up. And if you loved it, you loved it. There are a lot of people that I admire out there who just said, I loved it. I loved all the action. And I didn't, but that's okay. We have difference of opinion, and I enjoy debating on the qualities of movies, obviously.
Right, because we love movies.
Right. So anyway, back to our movie. Let's talk a little bit just about the setup, just the introduction and how things go on each of these, because that, I think, is a big problem for me with Gladiator.
All right.
So I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to do a quick bullet point. Here's the setup for Braveheart.
Okay, now wait a second.
Yeah, what?
For those who don't know, you are a lawyer.
Yeah.
You're a lawyer. You're about to give me some of your lawyer juju right here. I'm just a Joe Blow movie guy.
Listen, I am not presenting evidence here, okay? I have got... my wife, I shared this with you. My wife, when we're having an argument and all of a sudden she feels like she doesn't know how to respond to me, she's like, you're just using those lawyer tricks on me. And I'm like, if by tricks you mean logic and reason, yes. But I had those before I ever went to law school. But we're talking about opinions here, but I'm gonna try to give you why I feel the way that I feel.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the beginning of Braveheart, you've got that scene that I talked about where the Scottish nobles are all murdered, and he walks in and is face to face with these bodies. Then you have, his father and his brother are gonna go pick a fight, just like he does later on in the movie. And it's not about winning, it's about letting them know that they're there, right? And you can see this important aspect in his upbringing of, I know you can fight.
But it's our wits that make us men.
Yes.
So that's a huge deal to me, and then that impacts how he feels about things later on. To have those inspirational characters, it's obviously a good dad, and then just before he leaves, he gets the thistle by Murren. It's setting up that love story early. Gets his good education from Uncle Argyle. We see the marriage of Prince Edward and Isabella, so we've got the setup of why she is longing for love later on in the movie as well. Then we get our villain who establishes when the princess walks in, when the prince should have walked in. We get that kind of, oh, you're gonna rule, then let's see if you can handle what I'm about to say. We're gonna reinstate the prima noctura doctrine. So William Wallace, after his 20 years of education, comes back. He knows Latin, he knows French, and he's obviously an educated man, but he just wants to be a dirt farmer. This is mud farmer.
Yeah. Kind of like Luke Skywalker, moisture evaporators. Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit when we talk about Gladiator. Okay. And then he courts Murren, and you get this beautiful love story. You get the setup, and it's great. You have this escape in the rain, and they're totally jabbing at each other. Like, am I supposed to be impressed? And he says something in French to her, and she's like, stand on your head. And he's like, well, my kilt might fly out. But that's funny stuff. It's a funny courting. They're really in love, and you get that story. And then Murren gets murdered, and then he comes back into the village. He had thought that she was safe, and it was going to the place for them to meet, but it doesn't happen. And then you see him, after her murder, you see him riding back into the village, and both my son and my wife were like, does he know what's happened? And I was like, yes. And my wife's like, well, you don't, there's no way you can know from what I understand, but this movie's already 3 hours long. You just have to get it, and you're about to get it. And you see him with cold steel eyes come in there and enact revenge. But
that scene is really cool.
For an intelligent man, he knows that revenge isn't going to be the end of it.
I understand.
There will be a reckoning, and so he has to take.
They're not going to overlook what I'm about to do.
Right. So that's the setup for my movie, and I think the best setup that we've got. Now, I want you to tell me what you didn't like about that setup.
Okay. The romance, it works.
Yeah.
But they only spend about 5 minutes together before he's ready to go kill everybody. I mean, I understand the anger.
She's all he ever thought about.
I know, and she's beautiful, and it works for me. That romance works for me. But I mean, 1 minute, hey, we're getting married in secret, and again, he's supposed to be in his early 20s. The next minute, let's go. We're going to take down England.
It's the next logical step.
It just seemed like the romance was a little bit rushed. The actress did such a good job, and I did buy it. I did buy the love story.
Right.
But he exacted his revenge. He did it. I mean, he slit the dude's throat.
Right, but the idea is it never would have happened in the first place had England not been in Scotland doing what it was doing. And that's why the rest of the story is necessary.
Okay. Well, as a general idea, I think the movie is a little bit long. And I think that beginning part...
Well,
is it necessary?
If you've got a somewhat complicated plot, it needs to be a little bit longer to be fleshed out. Now, you have a movie that's the exact same length, and all it is a revenge story.
It's not the same length. It's shorter.
Oh, but by 10 minutes?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's flip that back to Gladiator.
Okay, so you've bought in by the time that something happens. Tell me about it.
Okay, so when the movie starts, you immediately see Maximus clearly has charisma. He's well respected. He's good at his job. He's leading this battle onto the field against the Germania barbarians, right?
Yeah.
He is brave because the guy says, hey, the catapults are too close. He's like, nope, the risk is acceptable. I'm going to be leading the charge. We got to do it. And he leads the charge and has this great victory. He meets with Marcus Aurelius, who is the emperor, who tells him, look, you're so good at what you do. My son is not worthy. I'm giving it to you. I'm giving in Rome to you so you can make sure that you get this back to the people where the power belongs.
Well, don't forget his big speech to the guys in the middle of that, because that was before he was going to give it was at the end of the battle, is they've had their battle. So don't forget Maximus's speech to his men. Did you love it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to let you keep talking. I'm not going to... You did a very good job of not interrupting my introduction. I'm going to let you keep going.
The one where he's like, what we do in life echoes in eternity.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself with sun on your face, don't be troubled because you're in Elysium and you're already dead.
Right.
Stay with me. Hold the line. All this stuff.
If you've seen the movie that came out afterward called Elysium, that makes that line really funny.
No, I that speech to me works. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to stand and take a sword and wet my pants and go do this thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So yeah, I think it works great. I'm ready to ride horses with this guy. And I'm ready to go to Elysium if necessary. When he gets this charge by Marcus Aurelius, he is the only one who knows what has happened.
He's the only one who knows that Marcus Aurelius
Marcus Aurelius is murdered.
Yeah, he's the only one that knows that the power was supposed to go to him and not Commodus.
Right.
Except Commodus.
Commodus
knows, right.
Well, right.
Okay, go ahead.
So the easy thing would be, I mean, what's the righteous thing to do in that instance? You know that the emperor's been slain.
Somehow.
I have the responsibility. He gave it to me.
Yeah.
And you killed him before we could tell anybody about this.
But you turned it down.
Well... Yeah, but then it was taken from him. It would be very easy. Look at what Quintus did.
Right.
Quintus looked and saw, okay, I can stick with my buddy Maximus, who is in big trouble, or I can stick with the emperor now, the heir apparent.
Yeah.
And he takes the easy way out. Maximus could easily take the easy way out. Take his hand, right? Mm-hmm. Take my hand. I offered only once.
Yep.
Yeah, I see you're kind of the guy in charge now. All right. What does Lucilla do? Basically, the same thing.
She slaps him first, though.
Well, she makes it known that she doesn't approve of his choice to kill her father.
How does she know? Keep going. Keep going.
Anyway, Maximus has the courage to do the right thing despite the extreme odds against him.
Right. Well, that's unquestionably true about both of these movies.
Right.
Keep going, because you got to get to the point of the driving force, which is the revenge, right?
Okay.
He's not going to get revenge for the attempted execution. But go ahead and talk about that.
So at that point, Maximus is captured.
Yep.
Commodus says, look, you get a chance to join me, you turn me down, that's it. Yep. So Maximus says, hey, Quintus, look after my family. Make sure you take care of my family.
Yeah, you guy who's betraying me right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Quintus, his best buddy.
Makes sense.
Says, your family will meet you in the afterlife.
Yeah. What a douche.
Yeah. I mean, he flips like that.
Yeah.
So instantly, we know Maximus' family's in big trouble.
Right.
Maximus is in big trouble.
Yeah.
They take him out to execute him.
Yeah.
He asks for a soldier's death.
What a bunch of... Yeah. Okay.
And then the Three Stooges are in charge, and takes them out, rides 1,500 miles back to Spain.
Yep.
Can't get there fast enough, and his wife and child have been burned and crucified.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
That is his now one goal in life. He's briefly suicidal, I would say. He's captured by this roaming guy who picks up gladiators, which that is the major problem that I have with gladiators.
It's a huge problem, but okay.
But
that gets us to that same point, right?
Yeah.
We've got that. Basically, that's the same point in the movie, right? We've established this is the driving motivator for the remainder of the movie.
Yes.
It's the murder of his family,
yes.
Right? And say, like, for William Wallace, it was the murder of his wife, and then as an after effect, it has to be getting England out of Scotland.
Okay.
Because that was the cause. That was the underlying cause.
Both are very manly, very worthy causes.
Right. So Gladiator starts off, and even before the movie starts, you get this Yellow Dreams works. And I was just like, why is this movie going to be in Sepia Town? What is going on here?
It's cool.
Okay, yeah, sure, it was cool, but it prepares you for, hey, we're either going to be yellow or we're going to be blue. I was immediately distracted by, okay, it's blue. No, it's yellow. Oh, it's blue again. Yellow, blue. What the heck is going on?
They do play with the filters a little bit.
And I was just like, why are you doing this? And so then you get this introduction to the dog. And you're like, oh, this is good. The dog's going to be involved. Nope. Okay, the dog's not involved. Oh, and
let's talk about the dog for 1 second.
Okay, but there was a bird. Oh, then the bird's not involved. What are we looking at here?
The dog... Okay.
Good.
Even the dog loves Maximus. How do you win a dog's affection? You love the dog.
Okay, so because everybody else loves him, I'm supposed to love him. I don't like that. That's
if you
the
don't
problem.
like Maximus, this movie doesn't work for you.
Well, no, I just want to I want to have the movie give me the story that makes me like Maximus. We're presented with him given this speech to these guys, which I think is probably the worst motivational speech I've ever heard.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, good news. If you have the sun in your face, you're dead. And if you think about where you want to be, and that's where you'll be. You know, except for those guys who are about to go die, because obviously that's not what they want.
Either you'll be where you want to be, or you'll be dead. Either way, it's okay.
Right. That's a great motivational speech.
You'll be out of this mud pit in Germany.
Right. So then it's the headless guys coming in. How the crap did that guy not fall off the horse? I mean, not only did he not fall off the horse, but he made it back to camp with no head.
They say no.
It's ridiculous. And then the barbarians.
It's not ridiculous. It's dramatic.
It's stupid.
Okay.
And hey, the good news is that's like one of the few funny lines in this movie is they said no. That one, I mean, at least I'm like, okay. I mean, it's ridiculous, but at least he's making it funny. And then you get the bad motivational speech. Then the Germanians stand there and chant for 5 minutes while the Romans prepare with their tar and their flaming arrows and all of this. It's absurd. It is just absurd.
Dude.
Yeah. It's bad.
You are digging your own grave.
I'm not. And then you get bad shaky cam in the battles. And then he's not a moral man. Give me some backstory on why he's not a moral man.
You know he's not a moral man. You have everything you need already.
No, you don't. He's not even...
He's 20 years late to the battle.
Okay.
20 years.
Yeah. So...
He shows up. Hey, have I missed the battle? You've missed the war.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You have everything you need.
And then
he kills his dad.
Right. And then Marcus Aurelius says he will accept my decision. Yeah, he really is not in touch with what Commodus is going to do. And the surgeon said he didn't suffer. Surgeons, really? Did they do surgery right there in the tent with all of the candles burning?
Yes.
You know,
yes.
In the very yellow tent. That's double entendre right there. Yellow tent.
You're way off base. You're way off base.
And then what happens? Quintus is betraying, and when Maximus asks for help, he's not only going to betray you, but I'm going to give you the middle finger.
He does.
That guy should have gotten it. I mean, if I'm going to hate a guy, it's that guy, right?
Right.
And he doesn't get it. He not through the whole movie does he have any repercussions, and he should on both sides. But what does he say? He says, ride until dawn and then execute him.
Yes. And
then gives what everyone seems to think is the greatest warrior of the army to the Three Stooges, as you've so accurately pointed out. And
Mo, Larry, Curly, get on out there.
Yes.
Get on your horse. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Give me a soldier's death. How about no? That would have been the end of that one. And then he grabs...
He was loved by these guys. They knew this. He was like a celebrity.
Yeah. And so
he's their commanding officer.
Right.
Okay.
And so they put him in a position where he can grab the blade of the sword and swing it like a bat and still have his fingers left.
I could see.
I can
see that.
Is this going to be a superhuman man? Is this what this is? Is he Iron Hands?
I can see where that might cause some trouble.
And then, does he kill them all? Yes. Every single one of them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then later on in the movie, Commodus says, they told me he is dead. Who the crap told you he was dead? Quintus? Because he's the only guy who could have said that, right? He was the guy that sent those guys off. So Quintus, knowing those guys didn't show back up,
oh my gosh,
knowing what would happen, didn't say jack squat. So when Commodus finds out later on, hey, guess what? Maximus isn't actually dead. The first guy he should be talking to is Quintus going, hey, what the crap, dude?
You're thinking too much. I do agree logically that somebody would have missed Mo, Larry, and Curly. Okay?
Yes.
Their commanding officer. Hey, where's Mo, Larry, and Curly?
Okay.
Hey, wait a minute. Weren't they supposed to kill Maximus?
Right.
Where are those guys?
Yes!
I understand that, but you're thinking too much. We need to get on with the story.
Okay, so then the next scene is him riding as hard as he can with no stopping, and somehow he hasn't been home in 2.5 years, 3 years, whatever he said.
Yeah.
And somehow the guys who've never been to his house beat him there.
That's because I don't know how they did it, but
I don't know how they did it either. But they think he's dead, but they go ahead and crucify the kid and the wife. So why? Why would they do that? What would be the point? The only reason to do that is if they think he's alive, which obviously they don't.
no, that's the emperor ordered them to take care. Well, Quintus did.
Sure, kill him.
Kill
I
him.
get that.
Yeah.
Yes, crucify them? That's a lot of extra work for nobody who you think is alive to see.
Yes. And the son squealed like a girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the wife moaned like a whore. And so, and that, again, that brings me to what you've just talked about. You get a very short romance story with, I mean, honestly, it's like you're 30 minutes into the movie by the time this happens. But you get no romance story with Maximus and his wife and child. If we had moments, if we had something more than a description later on about...
Did you see his son get trampled by horses?
Yeah, it was
Is that
horrible.
enough? Yeah, that's
It was
enough.
absolutely horrible. And I understand logically how
We don't need to get to
a
know that.
father is going to want to revenge the
Yes.
murder of his family. It's a movie. I'm supposed to get that backstory.
Okay, all right. Speaking of his wife and family, the actress who plays Maximus's wife,
Yeah.
she's a model. She's actually Ridley Scott's wife. He
Right.
married her in 2010. She did White Squall with him.
White Squall, that was 90s, right?
96, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Was she a major part of that movie?
Can't remember.
Okay. So then Maximus shows up, sees his burning family, and then tells Obi-Wan Kenobi that he has no reason to stay here anymore. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's a different movie, isn't it? Different burning family, sorry.
There is a Star Wars connection in this movie that I want
Uncle
to make.
Owen, Aunt Beru!
He is picked up by the Jawas. I mean, not the Jawas. A guy who's gathering gladiators out of nowhere.
Whose medicinal expertise is let the maggots clean the wound, and then I'm going to stuff some sand in it.
They will clean it. You will see. Okay.
And as you've pointed out, what a gigantic what the crap moment is that, where he's laying down exhausted at the burning crucified bodies of his family, and then slave traders come and steal him?
They just grab him.
I mean, that's what I would do if I was a guy picking up slaves, is I'd go over to the Roman general's house,
Right.
look for some over there.
Right. The guy living in Tuscany. Yeah.
Ah,
So, quick Star Wars reference for you.
go ahead.
The guy, Robert the Bruce's dad,
Yeah.
the guy who's kind of the wizard
leper.
behind the...
Yeah, the leper.
the leper.
Yeah.
His face looks just like the guy from Star Wars who taps Luke Skywalker on the shoulder in the cantina and says, I don't like you. Right?
You'll be dead.
Walrus Man's buddy. I'm like, hey, those two guys are the same guy.
Yeah. No, it's not the same guy.
Okay.
Not the same actor.
All right. So, okay.
So they're the two beginnings. There's the setup for the story, and I'm already hopelessly lost. You're giving me blue and yellow filters. You're making no sense at all with any of this stuff, and I'm not inspired to go fight with you.
Okay. Well, here's a couple of things I just want to throw in kind of in the middle of our argument here.
Okay.
I mean, clearly we've drawn the lines in the sand, but when Ridley Scott visited the Roman Colosseum,
Yeah.
people kind of beat up
small.
both movies, right?
Yeah.
For being historically inaccurate.
Right.
Braveheart takes it on the chin because William Wallace, and he's a historical character.
Mm-hmm.
King of England, he's a historical character.
Mm-hmm.
Maximus
Edward
is fictional,
Elizabeth.
right?
Yeah.
So when Ridley Scott went to the Roman Colosseum, he looked at it and said, "This is too small.
Yep.
I need to make this. I'm going to jack this thing up."
Right.
Okay. Also, I thought this was really interesting. When Maximus meets Lucius, right, Lucilla's son.
Yeah.
Through the bars, he's talking to Lucius, and Lucius says, "Hey, are those horses on your chest?"
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the movie, does it seem odd to you at all that they're going to let the nephew of Caesar within arm's distance of the gladiator slaves.
I don't have a problem with that at all.
Makes complete sense. Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So he asks him about the horses on his armor.
Yes.
And Maximus points in and he says, this is Argento and this is Scartar.
Right.
Okay, and I know we've talked about this.
All you Italian speakers out there.
That was probably a terrible pronunciation of your words.
No, that's not where I was going. The translation is...
One horse's name is Silver and the other's name is Trigger.
Right. And for people who may not be familiar with the Lone Ranger and Roy Rogers, those were the name of their horses. Cowboys, obviously, that lived much later in life, but it was a Russell Crowe, hey, how about we do this? And Ridley Scott said, yeah, go for it. He's like, you don't think anybody knows? He's like,
nope.
No.
Silver and Trigger.
Right. Yeah, except for people who spoke Italian and also were familiar with the Lone Ranger and Roy Rogers.
And people who dive into movies for podcasts.
Right. Call me Roy.
That's right. One more thing I did want to mention. Oliver Reed, who plays Proximo.
Yeah.
He died on May the 2nd, 1999, which is in the middle of filming Gladiator.
Right. Still had some vital scenes to record.
Yeah, I mean, and so the insurance company came to Ridley Scott and said, listen, this is part of the insurance deal. Mm-hmm. You can reshoot those scenes and we'll pay for it.
Right.
Ridley Scott says, no, it's okay. We'll just make it work, right?
Yep.
So they changed the script. They actually put a CGI mask on a stunt double. The CGI mask is Oliver Reed at his house, and you can tell. I mean, you can see it.
Yes. What's the line? Are you in danger of becoming a good man?
Yes.
And
he
his
just
response
is, yeah.
Which is an easy, if I'm going to do an Oliver Reed impression.
So anyway, he was dead by that point. They had to film that scene. If you look at it closely, it's clearly a CGI mask.
Yeah, the original storyline, Maximus fights the undefeated Gladiator, that was supposed to be Proximo.
I think, you talked about the accidental drip.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's as good.
No.
I think the fact that Oliver Reed's death caused them to write out Proximo, it made the story better.
It did make the story better.
Although,
he turns out to be a good character.
He does.
He doesn't make much sense in the movie. Because he's talking about these guys like they're all dead and useless, and then he's giving them inspirational speeches about...
Shadows and dust, Maximus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Win the crowd, win your freedom.
He's right.
You know, I own you, and I could give you your freedom right now, but go ahead and win that crowd, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay, so here's one more thing I wanted to mention. The real-life Commodus, the actual historical figure...
Yeah.
When he would have these gladiator events,
yes,
they would throw bread into the crowd, right?
Yes.
Which they show that in the movie.
Right.
He would also throw snakes.
Yeah.
Which I was like, what?
Yeah, he was a bad guy. There's no question he was a bad guy. That is historically accurate. I don't think that Longshanks was as bad as they portrayed him in Braveheart, but Commodus, the real Commodus, was not a good man. Interestingly, he was killed by a gladiator. It wasn't out in the arena, though. Do you know this? Do you know how the story of his death?
I know the guy's name.
Okay.
You know the guy's name?
I don't know his name, no.
Narcissus.
Okay, so Narcissus was a gladiator, but Commodus, he had a list of people that he wanted dead. I'm thinking of Billy Madison right now and Steve Buscemi with his lipstick on. But he would make lists of people that needed to be killed because he had dislike for them for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. And one of the people that was a mistress of his came across the list and saw her own name on the list. And she was the one that was like, hey, Gladiator, come over here. Let's see what we can do about this. And he went and strangled him in his bathtub.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never heard that story. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I did have one interesting fact about Braveheart.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the end scene, right? The disembowelment scene.
Yes.
Very famous, very dramatic, very moving scene.
Very moving scene.
And really, it's the highlight of the movie.
The prisoner wishes to say a word.
That when he cries freedom, that is certainly that moment for sure.
Okay, so when they actually, we've talked a little bit about how people were leaving the movie and they were going to use all the tools and it was scary and people walked out. So the actual William Wallace, before he got there, right? So they castrated him in his jail cell and drug him 3 miles.
Yeah.
And then he had that to look forward to.
Yep. And they drew and quartered him and took his various body parts to north,
They put
south,
one,
east,
like
and
his
west.
head on London Bridge, right?
Yep, on a spike on London Bridge. Yep.
So
It did not have the effect that they intended.
I guess not.
These movies, we could go on and on about these movies.
Right.
The battle scenes, which were, from my perspective, much better in Braveheart, much more realistic.
Okay, so I like Braveheart. The battle scenes were good.
Yeah.
I was interested. The story was compelling. The romance was there.
Yeah.
Everything works. It's just a little bit long and a little bit convoluted for me.
Okay.
And just me in general, I don't like big battle scenes because it just kind of all smears together for me.
Right.
So, I'm going to really hang myself here, but like the Fellowship of the King, or
Fellowship of the Ring.
The Ring.
Yes. Return of the King.
Yeah, those movies are just a whole big mess of CGI battle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that point, just to touch on that, with Braveheart, there wasn't a great deal of CGI to be had at that time. But I mean, I say
Right.
that. I mean, Jurassic Park was coming out in this time period as well.
Sure.
So obviously there was a lot of CGI that could have been done, but they didn't do it. They did a very limited amount of CGI, and to me that was huge. Like, I can't detect it. They used fake horses that looked realistic, except for that one scene where he's jumping into the water, and you're like, is that moving. A Barbie horse?
Fell off the carousel.
The CGI, to me, in Gladiator, I could see it. Like, I couldn't always see it. They obviously did a bunch of stuff that I didn't notice.
It was little, but it was noticeable.
Yeah, I mean,
when the tiger takes a swipe at that guy.
Yeah,
but I don't care because tigers and fighting are interesting.
Right, but I mean, the giant Colosseum and all of those things, it just didn't. I was just like, oh, here's a computer generated thing, and I am not against CGI. I just don't want to know that it's there. I want it to be so good that I don't realize that it's there.
Okay.
And I realized it was there.
Well, just to kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
I think both stories are good. They're both compelling. Obviously, they're good. They're both Best Picture winners, right? We talked about that.
Right.
95 for Braveheart, 2000 for Gladiator. These are well-loved, well-respected movies.
Uh-huh.
I just find the Gladiator story, for me, the character of Maximus is somebody I identify with and I aspire to be.
So to me, it's the opposite. I want some complication. I want to be surprised and intrigued. With Gladiator, there wasn't anything in the movie that I didn't see coming. Like, there were no surprises to me at all. It was like, oh, here's that scene where he's about to wipe out the guys that are supposed to execute him. I know that it's about to happen. With Braveheart, I got surprise after surprise after surprise. The betrayal that happened, the tactical things that happened, it was not foretelling the movie to me. It was, oh, hey, I'm experiencing this as it's happening, and I'm living in the moment.
Okay, that's fair.
It stayed ahead of me. That's I guess what I was the short way to say. It stayed ahead of me.
And that's fine and I'm okay with that because Gladiator is a straightforward revenge story. I did read online, people are like, this is just a Steven Seagal movie. It's the same story of revenge. I don't care. The story is compelling. The setting's compelling.
Yeah.
It's well made. I'm on board. I don't care.
And we didn't really get to go into the soundtracks, but obviously you love the Hans Zimmer soundtrack.
Absolutely.
I don't. I love the James Horner. You will walk away from Braveheart and the tune will be in your head. There's no tune on the Hans Zimmer one. I mean, there's his style of music is not really one to give you a tune most of the time. But if I've got a hero, I want the hero to have a theme.
Well, it is a little bit frustrating that like Indiana Jones has the Raiders March. I can whistle it right now.
Right.
But this is just
Luke's theme,
just moves through.
Leia's theme.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the movies that we really love, people had themes. Yeah. Even Marty had a theme.
But I don't care because the music in this movie is so good. Right. I got the soundtrack at home and it's awesome. Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
Great.
Grit. I mean, yes, they were mud farmers, but they were dirty. And it was real dirt. Like, this was an effect of being in Scotland where it rained 9 days out of 10. They were actually muddy. Everybody was so clean. Like, even the slaves were clean. And in Gladiator, I didn't have that grit. I wanted grit that I didn't get. I wanted it to be dirtier. And it was, like I said at the beginning, my compliment, it was dusty, but it was not dirty. It was a pretty picture. And if I'm talking about guys hacking each other to death in the ring, I don't want a pretty picture. I want some grit. And it's what I didn't have. I didn't have it in Gladiator.
Okay.
And then two last things. First last thing, and I've already said it, William Wallace had a cause, and the cause was freedom. It wasn't just a revenge story. That's a more compelling plotline. You want simple revenge story. I want not just a simple revenge story. Let's talk about freedom. His speech to his troops after you've been following him for a full hour and you see what he's done. You've gone through battles with him. You've gone through his loss. You've gone through all of that. That's a moving speech. And he takes it right out of Henry V.
Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And it was cool. Mel Gibson talks about how every time he yelled, his horse would trot.
Yeah.
And that's why he's back and forth and moving around.
And it pumps that intensity up. It pumps that intensity up to see him fighting with that horse and having to yell his lines.
It's cool, man. It's cool. It's all cool.
Okay. And then finally, last thing. And I said this about The Rise of Skywalker. I've said it about other movies. Gladiator had no comedy.
It didn't have any comedy.
I can't have a movie with no comedy in it. I mean, even Schindler's List had funny moments.
Did it?
Yes.
Did it?
Braveheart has a ton of funny moments that have to break up the intensity of the fact that they're hacking each other to death. And by the way, I don't remember if we mentioned this. The extras in this movie were the Irish Reserve Army. And they had companies, and they were local. I mean, it's kind of like, local soccer teams. They had it in for each other a little bit. There was a lot of competition going on.
Yeah.
So the scenes were as realistic as they are because those guys really were trying to beat the crap out of each other.
Right. I think that's cool too.
Yeah. So I got to have Steven in there saying,
"The Lord tells me he can get me out of this mess, but he's pretty sure you're."
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with Maximus being super pissed and working his way for one single cause. It's super satisfying to me.
Yeah.
When he sticks that knife in Commodus's throat at the end,
yeah,
I'm like, sweet.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, so that about does it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
I mean,
we've covered it.
And clearly obviously,
I'm not going to convince you, and you're not going to convince me. But hopefully the folks out there will see the flaws in your movie and side with me.
All right. Please weigh in on this at social media.
Yeah.
Hit us up on Facebook and Twitter at Shirley Podcast.
At Shirley Podcast on both of them. Yep. You can find us also on YouTube. We have the Shirley You Can't Be Serious YouTube channel. And I just would like to go ahead and give a shout out to our buddies over at the 30-something podcast. We love them. They continue to give us great podcasts, and they continue to promote us on their podcast, and we love you guys.
That's right.
The Illinois contingent.
Super appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
We like you, Spaniard. We shall cheer for you.
All right. Signing off.
All right. Thanks. Good to see you, D.
Good to see you too, Jason.
Bye.
Bye.
All music, images, and movie clips are used for the purposes of commentary and education in conjunction with the Fair Use Agreement under the U.S. copyright law.